Hey everyone, Reggie here, and today we're going to do a tutorial inside the Unreal Engine on how to do something simple, such as turning a light switch on and off. Once you learn how to do this basic blueprint communication, it'll probably be easy for you to do other things as well. You could take it as far as your imagination lets you. Primarily, this is going to be for architects, but anybody who uses the Unreal could benefit from it. So, yeah, hopefully you learn something from it, and let's get started. Okay, so before we begin, I do want to say that this project is pretty much designed for architectural, and it's a pretty heavy scene for sequencer and animations. It's not really designed for a real time experience, so we may end up spending quite a bit of time converting objects and fixing issues and setting it up so that it can be an interactive experience. With that being said, just go ahead and download the Hillside sample project by going to the fab.com site. And then once you search for Hillside sample project, click on view in launcher, and then inside the Unreal Engine editor, you should have the tab for Unreal Engine library, and your Hillside sample project, when you search for Hillside, should be there. Go ahead and create a project and launch it, and I'll see you inside. Okay, so after you have your project open, you should see a scene similar to this. First thing we're going to do is we are not going to use the exterior scene. You'll see up in the upper left corner, you got LV underscore exterior. We are going to switch to the interior scene. So if you open up the Hillside folder, should be in maps, and at the bottom here, LV interior. This is the scene we're going to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Okay, once you're inside your scene with the interior, you should see something similar to this. Our goal is to take one of the lights and actually light switches and actually make it work. So like I mentioned, there's several steps for us to be able to do that. First, I'm going to pick a light that we can change here. I'm just looking around, and I'll probably take this light switch here and make it turn this light off, on and off. And as mentioned before, there's several changes that we're going to have to do inside this scene. To give you an example, like if I move my camera out here and I go ahead and hit the play button, and as soon as I start moving, it just kicked me out. And then I have to look around for where the space was. Yeah, so here's a building, and it does not allow me to go back in. That's because the collisions for this scene is set up to where it's not friendly for an interactive experience. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and hit escape. What we're going to do is first take a look at the collisions, and we can do that by going to lit here and selecting player collision. And this teal box that you now see is your collision boxes, and you can see like it's pretty much occupying the entire space. So anytime something inside of it, your character moves, it's going to get kicked out. Inside, the other objects aren't too bad. This counter here seems a little bit out of whack with collisions, but we're going to fix that fairly easy. So what I'll do here is I'm going to go back to lid mode for a second. I'm going to select this wall here, and as you can see, it is part of a level instance, and level instances are basically, if you use like 3D Studio Max, it's like the X references in Max and other applications. It's just a level inside this level. So I'm going to go ahead and click on edit here, and this is going to actually give me access to the assets inside that level. You see everything else is grayed out, meaning that it is not part of this level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this box here, or this wall, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the browse option to go to the static mesh inside the folder. And what we're going to do is, instead of manually changing the collision for each object, we're going to change all of them at one time. In order to do that, you need to edit what's called the matrix, the property matrix, I believe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a select all to select all the items that are in this geometries folder. And then I'm gonna right click and I'm gonna go to asset action, and I'm going to go to edit selection and property matrix. So I'm gonna go ahead and select this, and this gives me the list of all the objects that I have selected, which is the mesh inside that level. And I'm going to select static mesh body setup, and here we're going to change the collision complexity. So there's about 3 or 4 different default options. If I click the drop down here, you'll see, the options are simple and complex. Use simple collision as complex, and use complex collision as simple. Basically, what's happening is the teal that you saw was the simple collision, and what we want to do is we want to convert the polygons for each one of the faces of all the assets that we had selected to actually be the collision itself. Keep in mind that it could increase your performance, which is why it's not really recommended to use this method, but it's a quick way to quickly get a collision set up on those objects that we have in our scene. So I'm gonna go ahead and select use complex collision as simple, and we'll give this a second. Yep, it just finished, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit save to save all that. All right, and so now if we go ahead and take a look at our collision, on the player collision, you can see it's a lot cleaner now. So it's not those huge boxes that were in the way. The collision is more conformed to the shape of the geometry that was in this space. You can see the counter here is correct with collision and everything else. So what I'm gonna do now is, let me go back to lit. Alt 4 is the alternative keyboard shortcut, and I'm gonna hit save on that level instance, because now I'm stepping back from that level instance back into the persistent level. And so now if I go ahead and hit play and I start moving around, I'm not getting kicked out. The collisions are now correct, but as you can see, I'm sort of floating and flying. We're going to fix that by creating a player character. One other note I want to mention, I mentioned about how performance could be impacted depending on your scene if you're using the collision boxes, or simple collision or complex collision. You may notice up here in the top right corner, I've got my frame per seconds listed here. What you can do is go to edit, editor preferences, and then if you type in frame rate, you will see an option here, show frame rate in memory. And then that will have this display show up. You can also click on the 3 dots here, depending on what version you have. I believe in 5.6, it's changed up a bit on the location of this. But if you click this drop down and click on show FPS, you also have the FPS counter here. Stat, engine, FPS, or you could include unit, and that'll show a little bit more detail on your, the GPU timer and any other feedback that you need for performance. Just feel free to explore with the stat and advanced options, engine, and anything else that you need to use. So with that being said, our next step is going to be to create a character. All right, so before we actually get started with setting up the character, there's one thing I want to mention. First, actually, I want to just turn off the FPS counter that I have here. So I'm gonna go back to stats, engine. I'm gonna turn off FPS. I'm gonna turn off unit, and there. So what I want to do is, you may have noticed when I had hit play that the sky had turned dark outside. That's because the sky here is set up to load dynamically only. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to levels, and by going to Windows, levels, and I have my levels tab docked over here. But over here you should see all these different levels that Epic Games created for this sample project. What we're going to do is we're going to select one of these lighting levels. We'll just take the first one, lighting default. And if you see the little green teal button in front of it, that means that that level will only load via scripting or blueprints. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on it, and we're going to go to change levels, change streaming method to always loaded, and I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And now when I hit play, and I can still walk around and run into the collision as before. So yeah, just wanted to show you that really quick. So with that done, let's go ahead and get started with setting up the player character. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the contents level, and we're going to create a new folder instead of adding our blueprints to what Epic Games already has set up. We're going to go ahead and create a new folder here, call it frameworks. Inside here, we're going to create another folder. We'll call it blueprints. Inside blueprints, there's several blueprints that we're going to create here. The first one is going to be the game mode. That's going to hold all the other blueprints that are associated with the character. So we're probably going to create the character, which derives or inherits from the pawn, and it's basically just an advanced version of this pawn. It lets you have swimming options, walking, running, things like that. The other option, the other blueprint we're going to create is a player controller. This is going to be useful for, if later on we decide to have multiple characters, such as online or multiplayer option. Having more than one controller could come in handy. This is going to hold, the keyboard functions, the mouse functions, and the other blueprint we're going to create is going to be the game mode base. So let's go ahead and start with the game mode base, and LV interiors without naming underscore. You could put GM, or you could put just spell out game mode, however you want to name it. I'm just going to spell it out to make it friendlier for everyone. And I'm going to create the other blueprint, which is going to be the character, LV interior character. And the last one I mentioned was going to be the player controller, LV underscore interior player controller, or you could put PC. All right, and so now with that done, we're going to open up the game mode. And inside the game mode, we're going to go ahead and assign a player controller to the LV interior player controller I created, and the pawn to the character, LV underscore interior character that I created. And so I'm going to go ahead and compile, save, and I'm going to go ahead and save all that. And now what we want to do is automatically select the game mode that we just created. So I'm going to go here to project settings, maps and mode, LV interior game mode, and you'll see under the selected game mode it has a player controller that I added, as well as the pawn for the character. So with that done, our next step now is to just go ahead and start setting up our inputs. Okay, for setting up the inputs, it's going to take a little bit of time. In cases where you don't want to spend time setting up inputs and mouse and keyboard setup, you could just copy the player, the first person template, and add that to a new project or your own project, and it will already have a majority of the inputs set up for you in player controller and character. But you would have to manually remove the options for, I believe there's a gun in there for shooting, and add your own logic for clicking on light switches and whatnot. But we're going to go ahead and go through this as quickly as possible. Real quick. So if you click on framework, and we'll create a new folder here. We'll call it inputs. And inside inputs, we're going to add another folder, and we're going to call it actions. Inside actions, we're going to add a input action. So right clicking, input actions, and I'm going to call this one IA for input underscore, and I'm going to call it look. This is going to be for the mouse, and then we're going to right click again, add another input action, IA_move. This is going to be for the keyboard movement. And inside look, we're going to switch the value type to axis 2D vector 2, so it uses both X and Y. And IA move, we're also going to use the axis 2D vector 2 for also X and Y. And then when we go back to inputs, we're going to create a new input that's called input mapping context. And in here, we're going to call it IMC underscore, I don't know, LV interior. And inside here is where we're going to add the two maps that we just created for actions. So just by clicking on the plus sign for mappings, and then IA look for the first one, and the second one is going to be IA move. So for IA look, this is going to be the mouse. So we're going to click where it says none, mouse XY 2D axis. And on this, we're going to add a negate so that it inverses the mouse movement. If you don't want the mouse movement in inverse, just simply remove this. So for IA move, we're going to add first the W key. Keyboard, we're going to add the A key. So I'm looking on the keyboard, there's the A key. We're going to add the S key. Collapse gamepad, S key. And we're going to add the D key. Now, you could add arrow keys, whatever you want on your keyboard. It doesn't matter. Whatever key you want to have a function of moving around, it's entirely up to you. But I'm going to use WASD. So for W is going to be walking forward. That is going to be on the Y-axis. So we want to do modifier. We're going to add a swizzle so it does not use the X-axis. A key is the X-axis, but is going to be negative because A is walking left. So I'm going to add negate here, so it's negative. S key is walking backwards and it's on the Y-axis, so I'm going to add two here, two modifiers. One is going to be the swizzle for the input axis and negate for the negative, and D is X positive, so I do not need any modifiers, so that's going to be up by default. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save on that, and next we're going to add this to our player controller. Alright, so stepping over to the player controller, I'm going to click on Frameworks, Blueprints, Player Controller, and inside here, under the event graph, we're going to select Event Begin Play. I'm going to drag off of this, and I'm going to type in Enhance Input Local. If you don't see it, just uncheck the context sensitive, and the one you want is the local player subsystems, not the player controller. So if you go ahead and click on that, what this is going to do is just actually call the mapping that we created for the inputs. So I'm going to type in add mapping context is what we want. I'm going to connect this node to the event begin play, and I'm going to select the LV interior that we created. Then I'm just going to go ahead and compile, save, and step back to the player, the character. So here inside the character, I do want to mention real quick, if you see over here on the left side how you have the character movement components, this will not be available if we were just using a pawn. So because of this, like if I click on it, you'll see down here I've got walking, jumping, I think swimming is one of them. Yeah, swimming, flying. So it offers more flexibility for the pawn. So yeah, so back to this, I'm gonna go ahead and right click, type in IA underscore look, and this is the action that we created earlier. I don't want the value, I want the event. So I'm going to click on the event for look. That's going to be the mouse movement, and I'm going to do it again, IA underscore move, and again for the event. And I'm going to split these structures, both of them. In case you're wondering, you know, where did X and Y come from? If we go back real quick to the input action and look for example, you may recall the value type we changed to the axis 2D, vector 2D. So that's where that comes from. So back into the character. What we want for the look for the mouse first is actual, we want the input for the controller. So I'm going to type in the controller yaw. So add controller yaw input for X. That's going to control the left and right movement. And for Y, we're going to add controller pitch. This is going to move the mouse up and down. Just cleaning it up a little bit. And for move, this is going to be our keyboard input. We had set WASD. So first thing we're going to do is drag off, and we want movement. So let's see which one we want here. We want add movement input. Yeah, this is what we want. So I'm going to drag the X into the scale value and a world direction for X, which is left and right. So I'm going to get a the actor's right vector. Yeah, that's what we want. And for the Y, we're also going to add movement input. And just cleaning this up a little bit, easier for you to read. For the world direction on Y, we want to get actor forward vector. And that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and compile, save, and if we go back to the world and hit play, so you may have, my mouse is left and right is inverted. I'm going to have to fix that. You may have noticed that it jumped up a little bit, and that's because the capsule for my character is pretty big. I can't even fit through here. So I'm going to escape, and we'll fix those two issues. The first issue is back on character. Actually, the mouse movement left and right. That's going to be in inputs, our input mapping context. So for look, the mouse, we have the modifier to negate X, Y, and Z. That's the mistake we want. We only want it to inverse for Y. We don't want X to change. Z really doesn't matter. So I'm gonna go ahead and save, and I'll test that real quick. Let me hit play. Yeah, fixed now. So my mouse is now moving left and right correctly. Escape, and then back to the character. The size was incorrect. So I'm gonna select this character movement. Actually, I'm going to select the capsule component, and I'm gonna change the height to about 50, make it a little bit lower. Capsule radius is pretty large, 34. I'm gonna change it to 16. Let's see what happens with that. I'm gonna compile, save. Now I'm gonna hit play. Much lower, much better, and I can fit through here just fine. So yeah, so our next step is we're going to actually have a mouse to click this button, and right now when I let go of my mouse button, I don't get a cursor. So we're going to have a cursor freed whenever we're not using our mouse button to move around. So I'm going to press escape, and going back to our player controller, we're going to add something here. What we're going to add is input game. Yeah, input set input mode game and UI. This is what we want. For the player controller, I'm going to drag this out and type in get player controller. I don't want the one for the player state. Let me scroll up here. I'm going to turn on context sensitive again because I had turned it off earlier. Yeah, so this makes it easier. So I'm going to do the get player controller. And this is what I want. So here, we don't need a widget to focus on. In mouse lock mode, do not lock. That's fine. And high cursor doing capture. We do want this on so that the mouse cursor disappears whenever we're moving our head around with the mouse controller. And from here, get player controller, we're going to hide the mouse when it's not active. So get show mouse. Yeah, get show mouse cursor is what we want. Sorry, we want to set it. Set show mouse cursor. And show mouse cursor will be on whenever we're not moving our head around. So compile, save. I'm gonna go back and play. And you can see right now I've got my mouse cursor, and as I move, it shows up. So that's all working, and I can still move around correctly. I may adjust the speed to this so it doesn't move so fast. And actually I can do that really quick. Let me escape. Go back to the character movement. Let me see here. Walking speed 600 centimeters per second. Let's change that to, I'm gonna cut it in half, 300. Compile, save, hit play. That still seems a bit fast. Let me check my settings here. Let me change it to 100 and see what happens. Yeah, that's much better. All right. So our next step is going to actually make this light switch work for the light itself. Okay, finally at the last step, let's go ahead and get this light switch going. I do want to stress before I get started that there's plenty of ways to make logic happen inside the Unreal Engine. That's one thing that's beautiful about it, and no way is really the wrong way. It's what way offers the best performance for you. In this case, I'm just going to set this logic up with a direct reference of the light switch to the actual light itself on the wall. We could set up event dispatchers or interfaces or casting to the lights, but we're doing it really simple, and we're just going to have a direct reference from the light switch to the light. So first thing we're going to do is in frameworks, I'm going to create another folder real quick. I'm going to call it objects. Inside, oh, spelled that wrong. Objects, and inside objects, I'm going to create another blueprint, and it's going to be an actor, and I'm going to call it light switch BP. And I'm going to go ahead and open it up, and it's docked next to my level. That's fine. I'm going to go ahead and select the wall, and as you can see, it is a level instance. We've gone over this earlier. I'm going to click on edit, and now I can select this light switch directly. And then I'm clicking on browse icon to navigate to where the static mesh is. And with the static mesh selected, I'm going to drag it into this light switch BP and dock it into the default scene root. With that in the scene now, I'm going to select it and I'm going to drag down and I'm going to add a on-click event for it. So what I need to do now is start creating a variable for the lights. So I'm going to click on this plus sign. I'm going to call it lights. And it is currently a boolean. I do not want it to be a boolean. I want it to be a reference to the light class. So lights, and it's going to be an object reference actually. And I'm going to click on this drop down over here to the right to change it from single to an array. This way I could actually add more lights later on, and I can show you, how you don't just have to have one object as a reference. You can have as many objects as you want that's a part of the class, in this case, which is the light. And then I'm going to turn on this eye icon, which is going to make it public so that we can actually drag it from the viewport to the variable in the scene. So with that done, I'm going to just do a quick compile and save. And now I'm going to drag off from the light switch so that when it's clicked, what it's going to do is it's actually going to do a flip-flop. So a flip-flop is a simple A-B. It's going to switch between one or the other as it's executed. So type in flip, flop. This is actually really simple. It starts with A. What we want to do is a for each loop because we want each object in this array to execute. And the result is going to be set the visibility of the light component. And since the light is on by default, we want it to turn off. So the new visibility for A is going to be false. And I'm just going to select both of these, duplicate it, because we want the exact same logic to happen for B when it executes. But this time it's going to be true, so the light turns on. And then I'm going to do compile, save, and we'll step back to the level view, and we're going to go back to our blueprint. So that was in frameworks objects, and I'm going to select this blueprint, and I am going to right click on the mesh that's inside our or that's on our light switch wall, and I'm going to say replace selected actors with, and I'm going to select the light switch BP. So now that blueprint is on the light switch. But since this light switch is inside the level LVH67 underscore unit, that's not where we want it. We want it to be in a persistent level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure it's selected. I'm going to do Control X to cut it. I hit save so we could close out this level. Now I'm back in the persistent level, as you can see here. I'm going to do Control V to paste that light switch. And now we got a light switch in the scene. So over here you can see the lights. This is the variable we created. I'm going to click on the plus sign here, and I'm going to click the eyedropper, and I'm going to add this light. So now that rec light is part of that component. One last thing that we need to do, I'm going to save real quick. I like to save a lot. So one last thing we need to do is we're going to go back to frameworks, blueprints, player controller, and we need to enable click events. So we're going to turn this checkbox on. That's important so that the mouse will register clicks. Compile, save, back to the level, and I think we got everything covered. I'm going to go ahead and play here and see what happens. So in the scene now, character rotation, everything's working. I'm going to go ahead and hit this light switch, and the light turned off as expected. Pretty awesome. So I'm going to hit escape. And I can show you real quick how we can add, more lights to it. We'll grab this light right here. Let me go ahead, and I have the component still, the blueprint still selected, and you can see over here I have the light. I'm going to click the plus icon, and I'm going to do the eyedropper again, and I'm going to select on that light. And you don't have to do the eyedropper if you know the name of it. You can actually do the drop down and find a name in the list. You can see it does any light object, point light, rec light, spotlight, any object that's a light, it should be available to you. So with that light added now, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And then I'm going to swing back around, click this light switch, and both lights are turning on and off. and that's the flip-flop happening. So yeah, that's it. Sorry it took so long. There was a lot involved with this tutorial. I hope you learned something from it. Reach back to me if you have any questions, if you have any problems. I'll be happy to help, and I'll make some more tutorials if you have any suggestions on if you would like something to happen, especially if you're in architectural and you're new and you want to create something that you let your imagination run wild, and I'll be happy to help you with it. So thanks. Have a good day.